Special weekend edition of the Death Lineup. We're 6 hours before Game 2 of the NBA Finals between Denver and Miami. You have any quick thoughts on Game 1 and how you expect the rest of the series to go?
I picked Denver in 7 because I feel like I've been picking against the Heat the entire playoff series, and I can just continue to be wrong every single time. So I didn't pick the Heat, but I picked them to push Denver to 7. But man, Denver didn't have the greatest shooting night, and they still were able to win by 10. I feel like that might say something going forward. But the Heat also, Max Strus and Caleb Martin, who have been just like absolutely amazing for them all playoffs, threw up stinkers. I don't know if any of them scored. So both teams shot poorly, but Denver came up on top. Maybe that's the home court stuff, but
yeah,
I think it still could be a good series. I feel like a lot of people see that Game 1 and they're saying, okay, 5. Denver.
How much do you buy into the elevation and all of that stuff?
Dude, what the hell? The Warriors went there and we were just fine. I'm sure it's a factor. It's a factor, but it's not, I think they're overdoing it with Chuck and who else was it? Reggie Miller or someone was.
It's probably more of a factor when you had to play 7 games in the previous series. Like if they had a break and they had time to get to Denver and get a little more accustomed to it, it's probably not that big of a deal. But I could see it being a decent deal in Game 1. But there's no excuses for Game 2. They've been in Denver forever now, so they should be fine.
Yeah, if the Heat win Game 2, it's a completely different series.
That's what I'm rooting for.
Yeah, I think I would want the Heat to win Game 2 too. But even if they don't, I still could see them pushing this. I could see each team winning the home games, and then Denver just has the extra one, so they win in 7. So yeah, we'll see.
A lot of people, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, a lot of people are like, "Oh, the NBA hates that this is the finals matchup. This is the bad ratings," and I'm sure they're not entirely pleased. But I mean, as a basketball fan, I feel like who the hell are we to care?
Well, did you see was it Josh Giddey, where someone had tweeted something and he's like, not for the non-casuals or whatever, or he said something like that, basically saying
he said something in support for the
finals. If you have a high level of knowledge about basketball, this is like
a great series.
Yeah, this is fantastic stuff that because the whole thing for the Heat is it may very well be that the Heat just do not match up well against Denver, but that's why this is so interesting, because Coach Spo has made so many adjustments. They lost Game 1 of the play-in. That's how far back we're going as far as them having to adjust. And then, in 3 series that they've had to play, the last one they're up 3-0 and they have to win Game 7 on the road. So lots of adjustments, lots of Coach Spo has been there before.
Yeah,
they have he coached 2 titles?
3.
Or was he coaching that?
Oh, was he? No. Maybe it was
Pat
2.
was.
I think it was
Pat,
2.
Pat
I think Pat was. Yeah,
he was probably on that. He was on that staff,
video staff or something. Yeah.
So, that's the fascinating piece to me. The other thing, and I don't know how I think about this, but Coach Malone in Denver, he's this entire playoffs, he's kind of been like, I wouldn't even say it's confident. I would say it's just sort of unapologetic about what they're doing. I don't like using that word because I feel like people overuse it right now, but he's saying stuff where a lot of coaches wouldn't say what he's saying because it would give the other team possible inspiration to get mad or whatever. But he's just like, yeah, here's our game plan. Make him beat us, and if he doesn't, great. We wanted Bam to shoot. Yeah, 26 points, but he took 25 shots. We'll take that every time. If I'm Bam, I'm like, very interesting that my name is coming up here, and you're kind of telling us, what the strategy was. So I don't know. It's just interesting. You wouldn't see, Kerr's going to be as honest as he can, but he's not going to give away any of the game plan. So I find that to be really interesting.
Yeah. I also, what was I going to say? Oh, if Miami pulls this off and they win the championship, just like off the top of your head, what you've seen in your lifetime, is this like the greatest title like of all time? The 8th seed, especially with the NBA incorporating the play-in, so technically they were like the 9th seed.
I wouldn't say it's the greatest. I would say that we knew that they were much better than they were in the regular series. So whether that's just weariness of the regular season and maybe some bad luck, they kind of
We didn't know this. We didn't know
series.
this.
No,
We
but
didn't know this.
a lot of people, like Bill Simmons included, were like, if Miami gets in, like it's a different ball game because they're prepared and they play the right style. And Bill Simmons was just like, I don't want the Celtics to play the Heat at all. And what's funny is when we were looking at the how the play-in was going to shape out, and Boston was Boston the 1 seed or the 2 seed?
The 2 seed.
So they were the 2 seed, and Simmons is saying the whole time, like, we don't want Miami in the first round.
Yeah,
because they
he flipped off though. He said it multiple times that he had someone on that was very like, hey, like I would love to remember what that guy's name was, but Simmons had someone on probably with 2 months left to go in the season who was literally like, I think the Heat could potentially be like contenders at this 8th seed. Like, and then so it flipped Simmons to be like, okay, yeah, like I am worried about this potential 2-7 matchup. Right when he watches them lose to, I think it was Atlanta, he was like, yeah, I'm off.
Was it Haralabob?
No, I would recognize his voice. It wasn't, no, but yeah, I think that like, yeah, we knew because they were the 1 seed last year and all they lost was PJ Tucker. So, I mean, that is like a kind of a big loss in terms of like defense. And I guess that's that corner 3-point shot, but
also losing Hero, being able to do this without him, and hopefully he's able to come back.
It's just ridiculous. And like yes, Giannis missed 2 or 3 of the games in that first round, but I feel like the Bucks should have still won the series. Just like they still had like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, and like technically the 1-8. It just wasn't supposed to happen like that. And then they go and beat New York, who looking back at it, New York was a little iffy, but then they go and beat Boston too. And yeah, looking back at it, Boston was probably a little iffy too. but I guess my point is, like, if Denver takes care of this team pretty easily, I'm going away with Denver was the best team and the East was easy. Those are my takeaways. If Miami wins, I'm probably saying this is the greatest championship of all time, just because of who they beat. They beat Boston, who was in the finals last year, Boston, who I thought was the best team in the league at some point this year, and then they go and beat Denver, who was the best team in the league.
Who did they so they beat Giannis, and then they beat the Knicks, and then they beat the Celtics to get here. That's a pretty nice run for them. The way that the seeding works in the NBA, very rarely. I remember, I want to say the Seattle Supersonics, they had Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. The Dikembe Mutombo led Denver Nuggets, I feel like, beat them, but that was a 5-game series. I think it was a 1-8, but I think it was a 5-game series back then. I also remember the Heat in the late 90s were the 1 seed. And the reason why I followed the Heat back then is because the Warriors traded Tim Hardaway to the Heat, and the Warriors were never in the playoffs back then. So I was just watch the Heat during the playoffs. And the Knicks were the 8th seed and beat the number 1 seed. But that might have also been a 5-gamer. But that was, I think, the strikes shortened season. So that Knicks team
went to the
finals. As the 8th seed goes into the finals. And there's a really good book about those Knicks squads. I think it's called Blood in the Water that I read last year.
Blood in the Garden?
Blood in the Garden. It's really good. Like, if you don't know basketball from back then, like if your knowledge of basketball doesn't go back that far, it's really good because it really shapes really what the culture was back then and what the NBA was back then really well.
Yeah. One more question before we dive into Warrior stuff.
Yeah.
Just watching these 2 teams, Denver and Miami, when I think of playoff basketball, I think defense wins championships. I think, just having like as much like two-way wings on the court as possible is probably gonna boost your chances in winning a championship. But I feel like these 2 teams kind of push back on that notion a little bit. So I was wondering, like, if you are, especially with the draft coming up, or just like team building in general, like, what do you take away from these 2 teams being in the finals of just team building in general? Like, do we need to rethink some of it?
I think based on, if now, we're looking at this new salary stuff, with very new eyes, and we're relying on people who have some knowledge of it. We have not seen it play out yet. I think the idea is the thing that I take away is if Denver wins this title, you have one signature player in Jokic, and then you have Batman in Jamal Murray. And I think that's how you roll. Like Michael Porter Jr., he's a terrific, guy to make shots when you need him. But sometimes, he's people probably feel like, maybe he's not as good as his contract. But it's going to be that 2-star scenario, right? Because as we've seen with these discussions, adding that third player, and this is the discussion I've been reading about the Lakers, do they add Kyrie? And if you add Kyrie, then you basically subtract all the bench pieces that help them get to where they got, when they were looking really poor, mid-season. So if you have two, I would want a Jokic who you run the offense through, and a Jamal Murray who's just a bulldog of a point guard. And then you just like fill in the pieces of these lesser contracts. And I think if you can run your team through somebody like Jokic, I think, roster slots 3 through 15, you're like, we just need team ball players. Like, we just need people like Aaron Gordon, who's like, I just want to win, and I'm going to fit the role that I'm supposed to fit.
Andrew Wiggins.
And I'm going to we'll talk about that quote, because I found that quote to be really interesting when we get to a later segment, because we're going to talk about some of the younger players. But but here's where it hurts the Warriors, in that Steph is your one, but who is your second player? Is it going to be Jordan? Is it going to be Wiggins? Is it going to be Draymond? If it's Draymond, then your window is really small. But if you choose it to be Wiggins, then maybe you can extend, whatever the team building around those two players is. I don't know if that's how teams are going to look at it, but it just seems like you're going to kind of start with 2 stars and build around. And so for someone like Clay, it doesn't sound like, in the current idea of what we know the salary cap to be next year or the year after, it doesn't seem like you'll be able to keep a Clay, and may not even be able to keep a Jordan or a Draymond, who, you can't keep him at the salary that he currently is at because of how it works. But, then again, Joe Lacob goes, we'll figure it out. So, so that might be it. But I like Denver's twosome. Like, is there a better twosome that you would rather have? Can you think of one?
I mean, I feel like when you say, like Jokic runs the show and then Jamal Murray's like Batman, I kind of feel like that's a little bit like what we saw in that 2020 finals, with Giannis being the guy and then Chris Middleton kind of being like the Batman, like the late in the shot clock. Someone needs to create a shot and get a shot off. That's Chris Middleton. That's Jamal Murray. I feel like I see some similarities there, but with what Jokic and Jamal Murray do with their 2-man game, in terms of just like the amount of things they can do just by 2 of them setting each other screens. Like, I've watched a video on like how it's impossible to defend them, and they say how many types of, I don't know basketball terminology as well as like all the different types of pick and rolls you could do, whether it's, pick and pop, pick and roll. There was something called like a flat and go around. I don't know, but apparently they do all of it. And I think what I'm taking out of this is that kind of duo is going to be really hard to replicate, but like that could be like a version of that duo could be, beneficial for team building. And the only similarity I could think of, which isn't a good similarity, but it's 2020 Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, where Chris Paul and DA would set the screen, Chris Paul would come off, and he has a lot of things he could do with the ball once he comes off that screen, whether it's his patented mid-range or whether it's finding DeAndre Ayton to shoot the mid-range, like free throw area jump shot, or it's DeAndre Ayton on the roll. I think what makes the Jamal Murray one interesting is that Jamal could stretch the floor and he could shoot from 3. Same with Jokic. And Jokic is also a super ball handler, super vision type of big. So I'm just wondering if you could find a version of that. I think with the Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton one, like DeAndre Ayton, even though he can kind of shoot a mid-range, I don't really trust it. Like, he's not like the best at that. And then CP obviously not being able to shoot the 3 ball that well. But I think if you could find a version of what Jamal and Jokic do just at a lesser scale, like maybe that's beneficial. But I think another thing that I'm taking out of the Nuggets is that your two best players can run the offense when the other one's off the floor. The Warriors don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Jamal Murray and Jokic do their two-man game. Say Jamal Murray gets subbed out, you're confident that Jokic can run the offense. When Jokic gets subbed out, you're confident that Jamal Murray can run the offense. I think that with the Warriors, you're not confident. Like feels like the whole story of the playoffs was, Steph versus everyone. Like it really was just Steph kind of pulling the guys along the whole time. They don't have their second best player, whether it's Wiggins, whether it's Draymond, whether it's Clay. In the playoffs, it obviously wasn't Jordan Poole, but whether it's those other three guys, like those guys could not start the offense, if Steph was off the floor. And, there's an argument that maybe Wiggins could be that guy. Like he was kind of that guy the year before, but he's never really been like a start the offense guy. Like, yeah, he does more scoring. Like, yeah, his mid-range stuff it felt like he was getting more into the groove of things as the playoffs went on.
He can't handle the ball. And it's very similar to Jaylen
Brown.
Like those guys, you don't want them to handle the ball.
And that might be Boston's problem too. Just in terms of like your two best players should be able to keep the offense going and start the offense when the other one's on the bench.
So
and
the other one that I like is KD and Booker.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, and it may be sooner than later, Booker's going to be the Batman, and KD is going to be the Robin, right?
Yeah.
At some point, maybe not now, maybe not next year, but sooner, because Booker, I think, is ready. He's already established himself as a great player. He just needs to win that big one. But they may need to reconsider how you build that team, and that's probably where the new changes in the coaching and stuff happens. The other one is, I don't think that the Dallas calculus works. Of we just need Luka to be so ball dominant, and then we'll put shooters around him. I don't think that works. I think you do need two players, and you need a player who offsets Luka a little bit. Like it can't be the same guy as Luka, or like Kyrie. Like they play too similarly, right? So that's going to be interesting to who because you have this really great player, and he's made it to the Western Conference Finals, but he seems to have stalled a little bit. And I think there needs to be people, they need to put that team together a little better. But going back to Boston, Tatum and Brown, they're too similar. They're, you could say, Jaylen is a slightly poor man's version of Tatum. Now, I know there are a lot of people who like Jaylen better than Tatum, and I get it because Jaylen's a dog and Jaylen's a fighter. And Jason Tatum just, he's just a talented guy, but he's not looking to fight. He's not going to fight anybody. But if you can find a guard like a Jamal Murray who fits with Tatum better than what their current rotation is, that's what I would probably try to get. And then, but yeah, like I just wonder how it affects, because with the Supermax and all this, like, are some of these two-way guys like a Bradley Beal, can he be a Robin on somebody's team?
I think he could.
Is he good enough?
Yeah.
To do that? Could you play him with a big? There's not many Jokic's, but like Embiid, right? Embiid has Harden, but Harden is he's on his way down. He's not on the ascent. So for Embiid, can he find a Jamal Murray? Because I think that would be the key to kind of unlock.
I think they're hoping that it's Tyrese Maxey on that team. And I don't think they're totally wrong. We'll have to see with that one. But I think Bradley Beal's.
Is it going to be Wemby and Jordan Poole in San Antonio? I'm just kidding. I'm not ready to kick Jordan Poole off our team yet.
Yeah. I think the Bradley Beal one's interesting because you think like he's like a buy low type of guy right now because he's not the best. He's not been doing the best since that 2020 season or 2021
It doesn't have
season.
A salary that's buy
but
low.
Then you look at the salary. But then you look at the salary and it's like, okay, this guy's like the most paid player in the league.
Yeah.
Top 10 or something.
Totally.
All
right. Let's talk about the thing that we were dreading a couple of shows ago. Bob Myers, he decided to step down with his role with the Warriors, and it leaves an opening. Everybody thinks it's going to be Mike Dunleavy. Joe Lacob would not show his cards. I'm not sure why they didn't have somebody ready to go. It's kind of weird that they and when I think it was Kawakami asked him about the plans for the draft and all that stuff, and Joe was either being coy or being honest, and he's like, "Yeah, we don't really know yet, other than Bob's working until the last day of his contract." And Bob was like, "Okay." I was ready to 1, 2, 3 Cancun, but what was your, it's been a few days. It happened earlier this week, but major takeaway. Do you think that this is going to be the first domino in the Warriors maybe not being the Warriors anymore? Or do you think they're just gonna plug Dunleavy in and sort of be the same?
I'm not gonna act like I know, like I knew Bob Myers was good. I knew that the free agency brought in was good. I knew what he did from, making the top happy in terms of Lacob and co, and then also making the players and coaches happy. Like, I know that's an important part of the job. But outside of that, like, you know, I I think it's replicable. I think he's a one of a kind, but at the same time, I think someone could come in and do a similar type of job. I feel like the fact that they didn't have someone ready to go, and like we all knew, like I didn't, I probably would have leaned on the side of I didn't think he was gonna leave, but all the stories this season that the Athletic put out, like, halfway through the season, and then all the storylines just building up and building up until this point, like, you've got to think that they knew this was going to happen. Like, I don't think Joe Lacob's a fool. So
Yeah,
I think the fact that they didn't have someone ready to me means he's still wrestling with, is it Dunleavy or is it my son? But to Tim Kawakami, he was saying that Mike Dunleavy not being at the presser means it's him, because he
right,
didn't want to take the
right.
shine away from Bob Myers. So I think
Because
that's an
they're yeah
interesting
they're
aspect.
they're big, they're really good friends supposedly.
Yeah.
But also, I think the report was, who did this? Was it? This is Matt Steinmetz. He's a Bay Area reporter. I've met him before. He's been around for a long time. He says that he's almost sure it's Dunleavy. I don't know where he. I'm sure he has sources and stuff, but like maybe we get that announcement early this week because when is the draft again?
Like the late 20s, or maybe the 30th even.
I'll look it up while we talk about this, but I'm sure Dunleavy is heads down in the draft. Like, I'm sure he's focused completely on the draft. It's the 22nd.
Oh, okay.
And so he's that doesn't change. And Myers, I'm sure, is somewhat probably still involved until whenever they do let him step down. But it just seems weird that you just wouldn't say what everybody is assuming is the deal, unless, like you said, like he's still kind of figuring out how everybody works together. I can't imagine you put your son in that role right now, because the idea to put a child or one of your family members in a role, you want to set this opportunity for success like immediately. And this is not that time, because of this new salary cap, because of this aging roster, because of having to make a decision on Clay after next year, having to make the decision with Draymond right now. Seems like it's harder than you would want to put someone like Kirk Lacob immediately. He would immediately be the bullseye for the fan base, and to a lesser extent, just the media, because they're going to be writing stuff and following him closely. But imagine if the Warriors are like 41-41 next year. You're not going to blame Steph. You're going to blame the new management team involved for not getting the right play. Like, that's immediately where it goes. So I don't think it's going to be him for that reason. But I could see getting more responsibility, having a bigger voice. They on Plus Minus, they were making a joke that he's the one that argues with his pops the most about decisions or whatever. They
He's the
said,
most comfortable doing it.
yeah, because that's probably been his entire life. But yeah, so I know a lot of people who have been Warriors fans for a long time and who have lived the Mike Dunleavy experience. They're kind of like, that guy? And the reason is because he is not a dynamic personality. He did not want the spotlight with the Warriors. He was the number 3 pick in the draft, and he was supposed to be a franchise changer, though that was probably unfair for him because he wasn't that kind of player even coming out of Duke. But when you're the number 3 pick and the first pick is Yao and the second pick is Jason Williams or Jay Williams, I had a dream that year. It was a couple weeks heading into the draft. No, right before the draft lottery. I had a dream that the Warriors won the draft lottery and they were going to get Yao, and it didn't happen. They got number 3. And so, yeah, he's just not a dynamic personality. He's not a guy who was necessarily savvy with the media. He's not a guy who the fan base loved. They saw him more as a reminder of the failures of the franchise than they did as somebody who was going to help rebuild. And so he never really got a shot. And then they shipped him out, and then they immediately shipped him out. And then they brought back some players that created the We Believe team. So he wasn't even part of the We Believe team. And so that is a very interesting PR move for this franchise, because I think it reminds longtime fans of failures more than it does of the successful years that we're doing now. So there's going to be some of that, and I'm interested to follow. Our buddy Ben. That's his thing. He's like, oh, Dunleavy. I lived through the Dunleavy experience.
Yeah.
So but you'll have to give him a shot. You'll have to grade him on what he does and what he doesn't do, and not on his past as a ball player.
I mean, that is an interesting perspective, because I'm not going to spoil it. I don't know how far you are in Succession, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Yeah, I'm still in like season 2, episode 2.
Yeah, but they kind of like hire someone to kind of be the fall guy. Like kind of like not cool type of, like, that person was excited. They thought they were going to change the company, but really there was a lot of controversy behind the scenes that person had to deal with right when they got hired. Press hit him right away. And so maybe that's the Dunleavy. Dunleavy takes the heat. It's like a nasty chess move by Lacob, where that's how he gets his son in.
The fall guy, so that fall it goes down, and Kirk Lacob is the savior of the franchise. So great. Bob Myers had so many great moments. I don't even know if you remember this, but do you remember when they brought in Andre Iguodala? So they bring in Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard comes to a meeting with them, and then he signs with I want to say it was Houston. And so, they have this big buildup, and it's all, you gotta have the cap room, and you gotta shed players, and you gotta make sure that you have enough money. What if Dwight says yes? Like, we have to have the money. And so Dwight Howard was 1A for them at that point, and then Iguodala is 1B, and Dwight Howard's like, nope, I'm good. And then Iguodala comes in, and it's like, wow, to go from Dwight Howard to Iguodala, like, from that standpoint in 2012 or whenever that was, you're like, we just missed the big fish again. But in hindsight, getting Iguodala is like the A+ move of the century. Imagine if they would have got Dwight Howard instead. How does that change Steph and Clay and how they play? And Dwight needs his touches, and it would just have been so different. But Iguodala comes in, and he's like the Ginsu knife. He's the utility of all utilities, and just makes that team go. And that's just a fascinating thought. And Bob Myers and Steph and those guys are behind that stuff. And I'm sure there were other people involved. Jerry West. We haven't heard a lot about Jerry West, and I think on the last show or the show before that, I said Jerry West was like the GM. I guess he was never the GM. He was like a consultant, but he helped them with decision making, because historically Jerry West was anti Kevin Love. When the brass was like, okay, Kevin Love for Clay, and he's like, nope. And that also changed things. Imagine if they do that move, Kevin Love and Steph on the same team. It's a lot different, right? So the whole thing is fascinating. And Bob Myers, the plus minus guy said his most important trait was just him being able to communicate the vision and the plan, which was a somewhat from Lakeup, but also kind of this team, this group think, and communicating that to the players and making sure that the players were bought in on stuff like that. So that's the other part of where I don't know Dunleavy at all, but he just seems so aloof and uncaring as a player sometimes that you kind of wonder about that personality fit. But hey, he's also a smart guy, and they believe in him. If he's the guy, that'll be something to watch.
Yeah, and what you brought up with Dwight or Iguodala is like kind of like a draft philosophy almost, if you take that to the draft, because it's like, okay, do we go best player available or do we draft for fit? And usually it's like you want to go best player available because you don't know.
Yeah.
Like this guy could be, X. This guy could be a first team All NBA guy. You just don't want to pass up on this guy just for a fit pick. But that's kind of what the Warriors did, but maybe Dwight signed before they could make that decision. But the Warriors, like, yes, at that time, Dwight was undisputedly better than Bogut. Like, coming off of a poor Lakers season, but before that, Orlando, first team All NBA, like almost every single year, like went to the finals with Orlando, top 3 MVP vote. So yeah, like Dwight was way better than Bogut, although Bogut's style might probably helps the Warriors more. Obviously, we see now that was the case. But if you go Dwight, then you don't go Iguodala, and then it's just this whole domino effect where it's all context and it's all situational, but that is like kind of like the draft philosophy of best player available or draft fit.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about. I'm gonna pull up this graphic here that we have not seen in a long time for you folks watching on video. The Moody watch. We did this last year, all year long. It was Kuminga and Moody. When are we going to see them on the court? When are they going to play? How are you going to bring them in? And the reason why I'm pulling this up is because I want to have a conversation about your thoughts and projections for both of these guys next year. Because if we go back to what I just said about Aaron Gordon, now the reason why Aaron Gordon can say, I just want to win, I want to fit in, I want to do my role, is because he was Kuminga and Moody. He was even a higher pick than both of these guys. I believe he was a number 2 pick in the draft.
No, I think he was 5.
Was he 5?
Yeah, that was the Embiid, Wiggins, Jabari Parker, Dante Exum. I think it was then Aaron Gordon. Then it was Marcus Smart, Noah Vonleh, Julius Randle, somewhat in that order.
And so he's had his highs and lows. His highs, dunk contest, and his lows just playing on some bad Orlando teams and not really getting over the hump. So now he's a vet, and he still has great athleticism. I still think if I'm the other team, I make this dude shoot threes, and I kind of play a 5-on-4 the other way.
Well, did you see what he was doing to combat that?
I didn't see in game 1, but I saw during the Lakers series where I thought they had some success at giving him opportunities at 3 points.
Kind of what they, just like a really quick tidbit, what they did is so Miami was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to put our worst defender on this guy and just give him the open 3. So they put like Gabe Vincent. But then Aaron Gordon was like, okay, I'm just not going to sit here. I'm not going to sit.
Well, but he's too big for Gabe
Exactly.
Vincent.
So he would just instead of standing at the 3-point line, he'd crowd the space. He'd crowd the spacing and just sit in the paint and just be like, I'm bigger than Gabe Vincent. Give me the ball. Like, and it was just that easy. So I don't know what, like, and even he was doing it with everyone, though. He was out muscling everyone.
Yeah.
You don't want to put Jimmy Butler on Aaron Gordon, or else you can see that you lose.
Get fouls too. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, this is what I'm talking about is when you have a game plan and the other team can go, okay, here's how we're going to attack your game plan. And then now it's up to Spo to go, okay, well, that's still a favorable matchup for us. Now, how do we combat what they were trying to do? So that's why I find this whole thing fascinating. But okay, so Kuminga and Moody, I think Moody figured out what his role was in the playoffs this year. Kuminga obviously didn't, or else maybe he would have played, and maybe that, we're still uncertain about why Steve Kerr didn't play him outside of some of the general comments he's made about, Kuminga's, still only 20 years old or whatever. Like, sure, like that's an easy excuse. I want to know the basketball reason. I want to know the X's and O's reason why Kuminga couldn't be in the JaMychal Green spot in the Lakers series. So I just wanted to know your thoughts because you're big on these guys, and does Kuminga figure it out like Moody did late in the season, or does he still go with this mentality that you need to let me be free, like I'm a bird, I need to fly, and it's really kind of gonna kill my next contract if I don't get the minutes. Like, I don't know if that's what his mentality is, but that's what
That's
my
probably what his
mentality. That would
that's
be
probably
my
what,
mentality if I was him.
and I'm sure that's what his agency and whoever's close to him is pushing. Like that, I feel like that's why maybe even that story from the Chronicle came out of like he's like maybe a little unhappy. But I mean, it's true. If I am a agent, I don't know if I want my guys going to Golden State just because of they are not going to play, and that is going to affect their next contract because it's not going to be as much money as if they had the opportunity to play, and especially with Kuminga, like like Slater keeps pushing it. Like he keeps saying, like, I think that this guy has a potential to be an all-star. Like I could see him as an all-star
Yes.
down the line. And I agree with him. He's a 6'7" two-way wing who can guard 1 through 4, who is experimenting with shot creation, who he can dribble the ball. Like he's might not be a break your defender down type of guy with the ball in his hands, but he can dribble. In the G League Ignite, again, I keep always pushing it, but he was the playmaker. And then he hit 37% of his threes this year, although that didn't seem to matter. But,
Yeah.
this is a guy who is, has all of the upside of an all-star. And to me, it's like you say, like, is Kuminga going to figure it out and do what Moody did? To me, I'm still with you. I'm waiting for what Kerr's explanation was, because this guy seems to have done what Moody did all year. Be the two-way guy, be the energy guy. So I'm, yeah, I think that the thing that I think I'm worried about is that I just feel like they're gonna lose if they do the bye bye Jordan Poole, bye bye young guys. Like I'm just worried that they lose the trade, and we'll see.
Man. Yeah, okay, here's another thing. So, not only are we wondering, our highest YouTube video from a views perspective in the history of the BSPN channel is our discussion several weeks ago about what happened and why everyone was so like, and it has the most comments. So people, Warriors fans, at least who somehow find our channel, they're very interested in what's going on, and they have their own theories, and they have some thoughts about Kuminga just does not play with these guys, and we learned again through plus minus, because they're so good at their jobs, that part of the reason why Wiseman didn't fit is because his minutes with Steph were not good. And if you can't play with the best player on your team, then maybe you're not the right fit. And he wasn't. We'll see if he's the right fit. So I don't think he's gonna be the right fit with Detroit either. But I wonder, maybe we need to look into these Steph minutes with Kuminga as well, and maybe they found something there where it's like, well, Steph is playing 40 minutes a game in the playoffs, and Kuminga has to be a positive with him in some of those minutes, and he's not. So we're just not going. We're going to play the math here, and we got to keep Kuminga off the floor. I wonder if it's something like that, but somebody who knows how to use those websites better than me will have to figure that out for me. But that's an interesting thing, right? Because we know Steph is such a big driver in their decision making because he's their best player, and he's their best. Not you could go back to 2017, 2018, and it was him or KD, and then some instances people thought KD was the Warriors' best player. Some people still thought Steph was the kind of the engine. But once KD left, I think there was like a thought like, okay, Steph's still the best player, but maybe he's not as good as he was. And then he showed out the next 2 seasons. Like, okay, he is clearly head and shoulders the Warriors' best player, no doubt. And so I think that's how they view the team, is he's the best player. And if you can't play with the best player, then maybe the minutes, you're gonna have to find them different. And maybe this is just like a unfortunate lesson that they're trying to teach this young guy, which I kind of hate that, but I get it from a coaching standpoint. But okay, so let's say we head into next season, and I imagine at the beginning of the season, it's going to be like, okay, Kuminga, You're going to get a shot. Moody, you know your role. You're going to play as long as you play defense and as long as you rebound. And then what if they go 5-5 to start the season again? Are we going to have to sit through this Kuminga inconsistent minutes because he's not a great fit, because he's a bit of a tweener for next year? And then it's like, this is the third year in a row I thought he's supposed to be one of these great, like, that's the thing that I don't want to see. And I'm hopeful that they find him a role where he can excel, but where he can also shine, which is the best of both worlds. I would play him next to Draymond and play him at the 4 and play Draymond at the 5 and see if Draymond could unlock him. Maybe it doesn't even have to be Steph minutes, but that's what I would love to see is, Draymond being able to push this guy a little bit and help him with some of the tactical things that Draymond is instinctually so good at. But I'll let you go. I had a long preamble because I wanted to get all that stuff, but I know these are your guys. So what are your thoughts about next year with these guys?
I just keep like wrestling with the idea that like they can't bring back the same team. I think that the Jordan Poole experiment, like I trust in Jordan Poole to be a good player, and maybe he's a good player next year for the Warriors, but I think that Draymond Jordan Poole situation probably just has to go at some point. And I just think that if you're trading Jordan at his lowest in terms of value, like you've got to probably attach something with him that boosts the value, that gets you a semi-decent return here. And I don't know. Just keep wrestling with the idea like they can't bring back the same squad. And I think that, I think that we're about to do the Bryce Fitz thing.
Yeah.
Where I give a draft pick, but like that's all. It's all going to be pointless if, they choose the route of, we need to not bring back the same team and we need to get a guy back. Let's say it's Siakam. Okay, Jordan Poole, Kuminga, and this first round pick, Siakam, come. Like there's a chance that this whole segment is fun, but it's pointless if they.
But if they do that, if we go back to our previous segment, can Steph and Siakam be the twosome that you build around? That would be an interesting twosome, right?
I think you would bet on it, right? Two guys who can run the offense at an elite level. Obviously, Steph leaps and bounds above, but Siakam, always a fringe third All NBA guy. So I'd buy it. I'd buy that. I think they should do that. I mean, that's what I pitched to them halfway through the season. I try to get Clay off my team.
See, they're you need to figure out a way to reach Lake Ups and get in. Maybe you can be the video coordinator.
Yeah, exactly. I think if the guys stay though, like we're just in the same position as last season. But like I think I said at the beginning of last season, I said one of the goals of this season, along obviously winning a championship, that didn't happen, but one of the goals of this season is so Kuminga and Moody become the guys, so you don't have to sign a DiVincenzo, so you don't have to sign a JaMychal Green, so you don't have to sign an Otto Porter Jr., so you don't have to sign a GP2. Like those guys take those 6th and 7th spots in the rotation that are staple guys that you can trust in. Like that was the goal of season 2 for them.
Mm-hmm.
With Moody, I think we're there. I don't think you need to sign. I think with Moody, you are there. With Kuminga, I would have said you are there up until April 2nd of 2023. Like just until whenever the first round started, and he just like completely lost his rotation. But I would bet on the idea that these guys should have a consistent regular season rotation spot. As great as Kerr is, I think that was his mistake, was giving Anthony Lamb too many minutes. Like, is Anthony Lamb, as much as he was the coach's guy who did everything Kerr wanted to do, was he really a difference maker of 10 wins? You couldn't just put Moody in and maybe take a winner or two less just to get him to that moment of you could trust having him on the court. I don't know. I think, the two timeline thing, fun idea, but the front office invested and picking those guys. They put the development coaching staff around them, but at the end of the day, like Kerr has the say so if they're going to play or not, and he decided against it. And I think that was kind of a killer of the two timeline plan. And if that's still going to be the guy who's the coach, and obviously we want him to be the coach, then I don't think you can keep drafting these guys if they're not going to be able to play on day one, because they're just going to keep killing their value. The agents are going to want them to go there. It's bad for the team going forward, because let's say they're the first pick next year, and then you have a Victor Wembanyama, and Victor Wembanyama is like, I'm not playing for the Warriors if they draft me, because, it's just, there's a lot of different scenarios that I feel like this can go down.
I think the Warriors would figure out how to fit him in.
Yes, probably. Yes. But I just, I can't give you what I think these guys will be next season, because I think this team's in flux in terms of, you obviously need more help for Steph, and you obviously need a secondary shot creator when he's off the floor. So that someone that can run the offense, and you'd think it could be Jordan Poole, but then you have to factor in Jordan Poole and Draymond Green's relationship, that this guy is just mentally checked out.
Yeah.
And he can't, be on this team anymore with the guy who assaulted him still on it. So and until a move happens, then I think I'll be more confident on giving more outlook takes, because I just don't think that, I think something's going to happen.
Yeah. I just want to see Kuminga go, you know what? I'm just going to come back and I'm going to be a monster. And then Kerr's just like, yeah, you're still shooting 35%, but I just can't keep you on the bench. Like, you're just doing too many good things. All right, last segment. Like you already teased it here. Bryce Fitz, you chose, and I guess we'll have at least two more of these. So you're gonna have to think of two more. Bryce Fitz, Jordan Hawkins from UConn. He is a sophomore. He scored 16 points a game. Didn't shoot terrifically. Only shot 40%, but 38.8 from three in his sophomore year
on 7.6 attempts.
And wasn't really asked to do much other than score and shoot. Four rebounds a game, not terrible for a two guard, but didn't really have many assists. Not very many steals either. But he didn't turn the ball over a whole lot. So, what do you like about Jordan Hawkins, 6'5", two guard?
I think he's what you want for a Warriors backup shooting guard. And I don't want to cap his ceiling. I'll get into it. I think his ceiling, KOC's got him at shades of Rip Hamilton and Max Strus. I think there's a Desmond Bane potential ceiling in there. But this guy, like, I don't know if you
watch Desmond Bane.
If you watch like two highlights, it's this guy just running off of screens, just doing that Warrior style, Clay, Steph, Jordan Poole, just running, catching the ball and putting up a shot. One of his strengths is obviously shooting, but movement shooting as well. And that's a big thing in the Warriors system. So I just think offensively, this guy might not create a shot all too well. He is a solid athlete, but he's not really that good at like finishing through traffic or maybe just creating his own shot off the dribble. But in terms of one dribble pull-ups, catch and shoot threes, movement shooting threes, fadeaway threes, like this is your guy. He is, again, just look at one highlight and look at how he shoots the ball. The form looks like perfect. Like it looks like really good. And so I just think that, as an offensive player, I look at this playoffs and I'm like, okay, again, Steph versus everybody. Steph couldn't get any help from any of his guys. Like this should be a guy on day one who can provide help.
Okay, first question, because we were just talking about Moody. Now, Moody may actually fit better as a 3 than as a 2, but he's also a shooting guard. Can they both play together? Can they both be on the same team together?
Yeah, I think the upside for me when they got Moody was that, oh my God, this guy might be, how tall is Moody? 6'6", 6'7"? I think he's 6'6". This guy might be a 6'6" two guard. Like you might have drafted another Klay Thompson in terms of position for size. Like two guards are supposed to be 6'4", 6'3", and you drafted a 6'6" shooting guard. But I think with Moody is offensively he might be able to be a two guard, but I think defensively he has a hard time keeping up with the guards.
He's more of a 3.
Just laterally. So I think defensively he's a 3. So I think the fit could work because Jordan Hawkins, like I think they're still experimenting with, or he's still working on his defensively, but some of the strengths I saw aside from the KOC draft guide, some of the other strengths I saw is that there is defensive upside. Like I've watched him play defense now a couple of videos of stringing together highlights and lowlights, and I don't know, I buy the upside. I think he's a guy who definitely has the athleticism to stay in front of someone. I think it's
Mhm.
just going to be experience and playing time for him to build up the defensive IQ to anticipate actions. That's kind of what good defense is in a way. It's like, yeah, you could have to be athletically good enough to stay in front of people, but it's also just the anticipation of knowing what the guy in front of you is going to do, or knowing what the off ball stuff's going to happen. That's what makes Draymond Green one of the best defenders of all time. So I think with Jordan Hawkins, it's right now you wouldn't bet on him to be a good defender, but I think his tools and just playing alongside of other guys who are smart defensively, I think will be good for him. I don't think he's Jordan Poole level bad. Jordan Poole, I think, is the worst defender in the league.
He's
Like I've
bad.
been saying this. It's him and Trae Young are the worst in the league. I've been on this early.
He
But
doesn't like the contact, and then he likes to try and draw fouls by over exaggerating the contact. And it drives me nuts because it takes him out of the play when he does that.
yeah. I honestly, like, if they kept Jordan Poole, I could legit see a Jordan Poole, Jordan Hawkins, like Moses Moody backup lineup, like, working. Like, I
Mhm.
just think offensively, like, I would buy that. So again, I don't think they can keep Jordan Poole because of the whole thing. But anyway, like, I think that Jordan Hawkins, I would urge the listeners to watch, just 2 highlights and tell me that he doesn't look like he could play in the Warriors system just by how he moves off the ball in terms of coming to catch a shot to then put it up, coming off of screens. Someone just he looks like a guy who would fit seamlessly into the Warriors rotation.
So KOC has him on his big board, which was updated about, I don't know, last week sometime, at 25. So the Warriors are drafting at what, 19?
Yes.
So, but in his mock draft, which it's been a few weeks since he's updated his mock draft, he had him going to the Lakers at 17. Probably more of like a fit thing than anything else. But the pluses, you mentioned the pluses. The minuses, KOC says not a primary ball handler, lacks the handle and wiggle to break down defenders. Under the rim, under the rim, at the rim finisher, who would benefit from adding a floater and some more touch layups to his repertoire. And then just the fact that he didn't shoot great as a freshman. Interesting.
I don't buy the back. I think the bottom part was, like, sure, wasn't a great shooter as a freshman, but I think you buy the shot. Like, literally just look at his shooting form. Like, it looks pure. It looks believable. He's shooting from 2 feet behind the 3-point line in college too. So that's like an NBA 3-point shot. You buy it.
What about Ryan Rollins?
I don't remember what he was coming into the league though.
We may need to do a little bit of digging on Ryan Rollins because
he was
like. Because what if Ryan Rollins comes into camp and he's just balling, and we're like,
you
what?
Don't bet on that one bit. Just but he got screwed with the injury.
Like he was a little bit of he's kind of like a joke on plus minus, right? Like they kind of they'll make. But a little
the thing is, what I will
joke.
say, sorry to cut you off, Jordan Poole was a joke. Going into his second season,
he struggled.
Jordan Poole was a joke on plus minus, especially on plus minus. Like Marcus, I remember this vividly. Like I remember where I was when he said this, but Marcus, me and JJ were higher on Jordan Poole than most, because it just looked like you buy into what he could do on the ball. Like it looks like, to me, it was always he was shaking his defenders, he was getting open looks, creating separation. He just couldn't hit the shot.
Yeah,
but they were making him a joke on plus minus going into year 2, and I remember it because Marcus was the one who kind of put his hand up all shy. I was like, I think Jordan Poole could be good, but he kind of made it as a joke so they wouldn't make fun of him. But I feel like he was legit about it. And then Jordan Poole has a great year too. So yeah, Ryan Rollins is the joke right now. I'd probably bet on him staying the joke just because he was in the G League for the majority of the year. Halfway through the year, he's out for the rest of the season. Like he just got, it was unfortunate, but I don't think you bet on him for a rotation spot. We'll see.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. All right. I think that's a good we almost made an hour. Next time, hopefully we'll get back during the week. We had some struggles with our schedules this week. So usually we like to do Thursday-ish. So hopefully we'll be back around that time frame. But if not, we will try and make sure, like today, we're on a Sunday, taking time to do this. So but like I said, there's only about 18 days until the draft. So we'll have 2 more of Bry's fits, and then draft day. I think last year we came on and we did a live show right after the draft, or at least after the first round of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can do that again
I wonder if the
this year.
Warriors go try to get a second round pick or something, because
You
they don't
think
have
they
one
are?
right now.
Oh, you mean to trade, or do you mean to
Or
draft somebody?
to like maybe it's they get rid of the first round pick and get a second round pick. I don't know. Well, like I think there is like I've said about this specific draft is it feels like there is pretty interchangeable players
Yeah.
from 13 or 14 all the way to 30. So
Right.
I wonder if the Warriors could say like, oh, I feel like we can get
And
the
they
guy
would
we want at
save
30.
some guaranteed money, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that I could definitely see that happen. Or you just you trade. Can they I can't remember. Can they actually trade this pick? Like there's like some qualification around them
The
trading.
Stepien rule.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So we need to figure out how that works. But yeah. There's one other thing I wanted to mention. So for one, the We Want Winners will be up later tonight. Rod and I will be back. We're on our every 2-week thing right now until the closer to the season starts. There's one other thing I wanted to ask you, but I forgot. I'll probably I'll remember, and then we'll save it for next time. But
hey, when's Luis Matos coming up?
well, Brad and I will talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
will go to his first start. I will also.
Now I know what I was going to ask you. California Classic's going to be in Sacramento.
Oh yeah,
we're going to try and go. It's literally all day the day before 4th of July. We're going to have to take the day off of work. But then are you going to Summer League in Vegas?
Yes.
When is that?
July 7th. It starts on a Friday. We're gonna go Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah,
that's gonna be so fun. You're gonna have to keep me in the loop about what's going on, and when we come back, you'll have some intel for us.
That's the goal.
All right, so that is it for this show. For Bri, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.